responsibility of government is to protect people and property.
The Justice Department says they are looking for federal-level solutions to the crisis, but the White House so far is leaving it to city and state leaders to fend off thieves and vandals.
Fox's Jillian Turner. New York Attorney General's looking into a man's death weeks after he burst into flames. Investigators say Jason Jones doused himself with hand sanitizer before a Catskill police officer hit him with a taser, and he went up in flames. The months-long strike at Kellogg's may soon be over. Union members will meet Friday and vote Sunday on a tentative agreement.
The union said some progress had been made on key issues, including cost of living wage adjustments for all workers and the removal of the term legacy employee. A resolution isn't assured at this point since the union overwhelmingly rejected the last tentative deal reached by negotiators earlier this month.
Fox's Hillary Barsky. There she is. The new Miss America crowned Thursday night is Miss Alaska, Emma Broyles. This is the 100th anniversary of the competition that started in 1921 in Atlantic City as a beauty pageant. And on Wall Street, the Dow slipped 29 points. The Nasdaq tumbled 385. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Santa's come in and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 3.99% and up to $50,000. And with the new Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas Loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
Need to finish the job or start one the right way? Get the right stuff at East West Rental Center. You can switch to easy mode using industrial strength equipment. With years of experience helping builders, East West Rental gives you exactly what you need. Tools for landscaping, concrete, lifts, trucks, tables, tents, chairs, water blasters, excavators, forklifts, air compressors, and more. Call East West Rental Center at 646-1463 or visit them in Upper Dumont. Open Monday to Saturday from 7 to 5, Sundays 8 to 5.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at GuamAutospot.com.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Not today, not tomorrow, not on Sunday, even though there's no Tall Tales tomorrow and Sunday. Much to our regret, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Second Amendment, United States Constitution, one of the guideposts for this program, which is a constitutionally oriented, conservative call-in talk show. If you want to have, if you want your voice to sound off on to our international radio listening audience, dial in 671-888-8255, 671-888-TALK, and you'll be talking with the legendary Jose Martinez. And if you don't piss him off too much, he might refer your call. He might refer your call to me, and I'll put you on the air with our international radio listening audience. Let's start out with Jemmy Ikotny. I suppose it's the Christmas season, and people are trying to be really nice, so we don't have any hard-edge editorials again today. The Daily News says, our view, community will benefit from the graduates of UOG's School of Engineering. This weekend, the university will realize the efforts of a program that got its start back in 1989, when the university started a 2-year pre-engineering program. After completing coursework at 2 years, UOG students could be admitted to a 4-year engineering school. Notably, the University of Iowa and the Mapua Institute of Technology in the Philippines, with which the university had agreements. Former UOG President Robert Underwood wanted to go beyond that and offer a 4-year accredited engineering degree program. Sharam Khosrow Panah, who recently retired, was the founding dean of UOG School of Engineering and led it through its formative stages. The program, since 2019, has offered a 4-year degree that's accredited by the Western Association of Schools and Colleges. Among the approximately 250 graduates who will receive degrees at the Fanukanan 2021 commencement ceremony Sunday at the Calvo Fieldhouse will be the first 12 graduates to earn civil engineering degrees from the University of Guam. Quote, with our first ever engineering graduates, who will start filling jobs in a highly in-demand sector of the region's workforce, this commencement really embodies our 70th anniversary theme of transforming lives and advancing communities, said UOG President Thomas Kreis. The American Society of Civil Engineers states the scope of the profession is the design and maintenance of public works such as roads, bridges, water and energy systems, as well as public facilities like ports, railways, and airports. The graduates of this program will fill critical needed jobs in both the private and government sectors. They will be vital workers in a variety of infrastructure projects, from new and redesigned roads to water projects, new buildings, and more. Engineers are in demand and will be compensated for their expertise. Those who go through UOG's program will not only find jobs waiting for them, they will find good paying jobs. Kudos to Underwood for his vision and to all those who work to make that vision a reality at the university. The island community will benefit greatly from the graduates the School of Engineering produces. Well, I can't disagree with anything the editorial says. It's more of a news story than an editorial. No Blue Star. And then the Post. As soon as I finished reading this, I was really tempted to quote the words of the immortal Ebenezer Scrooge when he showed up early in the morning to begin his duties at the accounting firm of Scrooge and Marley. And Bob Cratchit said, "Merry Christmas, Mr. Scrooge," to which Ebenezer said, "Christmas, bah, humbug." Some of the great words in English literature. Guam's spirit of giving helps bring cheer to hundreds of foster children on Guam and kids in shelters. Their needs are year-round. There's a lot to appreciate about living on our island home, where there's still a sense of community and where we still, for the most part, willing to help our neighbors, friends, and families, and so on, down to the end. And the punchline here is there are also dozens of children who remain with their parents but who don't have a place to call home and are living in shelter facility. They also could use your help. And to help foster children year-round, there's a phone number. And you could also get in touch with the Salvation Army Guam Corps, and there's a Facebook address for there. I'm really disappointed in the Salvation Army. I used to give them a lot of credit, especially back in the mainland, for standing out on the street corners in bitter cold weather with those kettles and their bells, you know, trying to raise funds for their good works. But they've gone woke. So I don't know who the Salvation is for anymore. All right, so much for Zemi Ikotni. Not much there today. to stimulate the discussion, which Tall Tales is famous for. So we go from there to the card. And on the card today, I've got Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. And by the way, we do not practice systemic racism here on this program. Then I've got Tall Tales versus Separatists. Yesterday I didn't get to that item on the card, and I said I'd put it on near the front of the card this time. After that, I've got the Guam government of Guam Retirement Fund versus Jerry Kitchen. So you're probably wondering, the retirement fund is taking on Jerry Kitchen? Are they serving Chinese food up at the retirement fund? Well, not quite, but we'll talk about it. And then we've got Zipper versus Manners. This is about driving an automobile. And next, Pocahontas. I don't need to tell you what that's about. Pocahontas versus the Supremes. Marxism versus America. And some holdovers. Chicago versus Fox. BLM versus hate crime. So starting out with Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism, this is a theme that I hope you can tie a mental string around your mental finger to keep remembering, because it's a theme that will be repeated time and time again here on Tall Tales, where the elements in our community, the Guam community and the mainland community, will gaslight you to try to convince you that things that you know are true are not true, that what you think are facts really aren't facts. As an example, the Battle of Red Rice, where Paul Zerzan wrote a letter to the Daily News saying, we've been calling it red rice all this time, but take a look. It ain't red. It's orange. The Daily News wouldn't let that go. So the Daily News sicked Therese Padua Howell and Paul to tell him, you know, we don't care what you think. We call it red rice. It's part of our customs and tradition. Classic case of the narrative overcoming the facts and the truth. Don't trust your eyes when you look at that rice. You've got to check with the people who want to gaslight you down there at the Daily News. And it's not the first time that the Daily News has done that. Okay, systemic racism. We'll put that aside for the moment.
Just real quick, Bob, there's another perspective to the narrative versus reality. It also matters on the speaker. The speaker, we'll say Paul, might have just been looking at the color of the rice, but because of who he is and the color of his skin, he was attributed a whole different offense.
Absolutely.
Whereas we had a caller who called and said, you know, when my son was 3 years old, he said the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But he's never got any essays written to him, the letters in response to his question.
By his grandpa.
He wasn't spanked.
Yeah.
Sent to culture concentration camp.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right, Paul, Jose. That yeah, a lot depends on who says it, and then of course part of the narrative is that only minorities, people in the minority, can speak the truth. It's presumptively correct if it's spoken by a member of the minority, and it's presumptively white racism if it's someone who happens to be what we call a white nowadays. Paul Zerzan being white, he was unloaded upon by Therese Padua Howe, because, you know, it was a how dare you. And poor old Paul's kind of used to it. It's what I call the Hope Cristobal phenomenon. Hope Cristobal, and we'll play that again on Monday. Remind me, Jose. Pope Cristobal told Paul Zerzan, who had the temerity to come to a rally down in Petey, that he was a colonizer, that he was a murderer, and that she was Tautanu. and went into that whole rhetorical delivery. More of the same thing, more systemic racism. Okay, so first thing on the card, or the next thing on the card here, is the insert that ran in last Friday's Daily News. It looks like this, and it's titled "Guam, a Territory Like No Other." And the attribution says it's paid for by the Commission on Decolonization and funded through the U.S. Department of Interior, Office of Insular Affairs, Technical Assistant Program Grant, Federal Award Number D16AP 00021 for the purpose of decolonization education. Now, the first thing I pointed out to you is that this is not about decolonization. This is about self-determination for Chamorros. And I went through, I got almost through the first page, which is only 4 paragraphs, and pointed out all of the attempts to channel your thoughts to the point where you finish this 20-page insert. You're going to be, at least it's going to be very suggestible to you that independence is where we ought to go. Because every page has several gates, and in order to get through the gate, you kind of have to say, well, yeah, that would be independence, wouldn't it? So the first page starts out with a fib. Resolving Guam's political status is important work that will prepare our island to move into the future in an ever-changing world. Leading you to think that this whole 20 pages is about resolving Guam's political status, but it's not. It's about Chamorro self-determination. Read Independence for Guam, and I've explained this many times before. The separatists would have you believe, separatists led by Hope Cristobal, who drafted the public law that created the Chamorro, the Decolonization Commission for the self-determination of the Chamorro people. The insert here would lead you to believe it's about Guam's political status, etc., and refer you back to the 3 alternatives that Hope proposes in her public law, and those are independence, statehood, and free association. And I've explained why free association is a legal impossibility. Statehood is a practical impossibility. That leaves nothing but independence. So we have a government agency that spends about $1 million a year to prop up Melvin Wanpat to basically convince you that independence is the way that Guam should go. So the last paragraph on this first page says, Guam is unlike any other place, and there is no perfect model for us to follow or imitate. Well, there is a perfect model for us to imitate. We can't do it because it's a practical impossibility, but we know exactly what statehood is. There's no imponderables there. No one is saying, buy a pig in the poke, like with independence. We don't know what the separatists have planned for independence. Whatever it is, I'm not in favor of it. And free association is an impossibility. But statehood is certainly a known quantity. But this is what I mean by the verbal trickery here. Guam is unlike any other place. So what works somewhere else might not work here. And there is no perfect model for us to follow or imitate, taking statehood out of the mix. Now, this is important to them and to us, because if we ever had a plebiscite where we voted on those 3 things, the default status quo vote is statehood. If you want things to stay the way they are, then you'd vote statehood, because we'd be an unincorporated territory from now until hell freezes over. The paragraph goes on to say, we have clearly outgrown our unincorporated territory status, and further improvements under the current status quo are not enough to fix the inequity of the relationship with the United States. A fully self-governing status is the only way to empower the people of Guam to protect our own interests and make decisions that are right for us. So what is a fully self-governing status of those three?
Independence.
Only independence. Being a state is not a fully self-governing status. You have a national government. You have a constitution that splits up the authority between the states and the national government. A lot of the things that the separatists say are important are not available to states. States don't enter into treaties with foreign countries. States are subject to the United States Constitution in toto, whether you like it or not. And if you listen to Tall Tales, you've heard me rant more often than not that the powers of the states are being continually eroded by the national government. I don't use the words federal government very often on this program because we don't have a federal government. We had a federal government once upon a time. No more. We now have a national government. So a fully self-government status is definitely not statehood. That can only be referring to independence. So there are these little gates that you continually go through. Yeah, fully self-governing status. That's what we really need, is a fully self-governing status. And then the next thing we pick up on the next page, a rhetorical question. What is sovereignty? The concept of sovereignty forms the basis of the international law system, with each country possessing sovereignty. Now, this has got to refer to statehood, right? Wrong. When a country possesses sovereignty, that country has the exclusive right to exercise authority within its borders and without outside interference from another country. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Nobody could tell us what to do. Possessing sovereignty also means that within the international system, all sovereign countries are equal. Yeah, tell that to the folks down to Nauru when they're negotiating with the People's Republic of China, that all sovereign countries are equal. No country is politically superior to another. That's an interesting idea. And no country can exercise authority within another country's border. Call up the folks over there in Kiev and find out if that's correct. Ukraine. When countries make agreements with one another, such as defense treaties and trade deals, they are exercising their sovereignty. So, this is another one of those gates. So, this is to prompt you to think, yeah, Guam should be sovereign. We should be able to have our own treaties and trade deals and things like that. Sovereignty is, as it exists at the international level, differs from the concept of state sovereignty. While the United States itself possesses sovereignty as a country, each of the 50 states also possesses state sovereignty. State sovereignty gives states authority over certain aspects of their governance within their respective borders. So which is better, national sovereignty or state sovereignty? If what you're after is sovereignty, if that's the end, if that's the prize, if that's the brass ring on the merry-go-round, then it's not state sovereignty, it's got to be national sovereignty. If a federal action or policy is found to be an overstep of federal authority, state sovereignty enables states to challenge and defy that action or policy. Oh, man, how does a state do that, I wonder? Any differently than a territory would? No. This balance of power is a critical component of the American system of government. So we spend, let's see, it looks like about 15 sentences here on international sovereignty, and federal sovereignty, almost 4 sentences. I mean, state sovereignty. As an unincorporated territory, Guam does not possess sovereignty at the international level, nor does it possess state sovereignty within the U.S. federal system. This lack of sovereignty over both is external, and internal affairs have been a point of contention throughout Guam's history. With the Guam Commonwealth Draft Act, the United States opposed the inclusion of a mutual consent clause which would have given Guam a form of state sovereignty. No, it would have given Guam a form of sovereignty far in excess of what states possess, because the mutual consent clause was that no law could be applicable to Guam unless Guam consented to it. That's not the way the U.S. federal system works. When, if all of the states except for Texas are in favor of a particular program, and Congress passes a law within the confines of the Constitution, and Texas hates it, it still applies in Texas. This lack of sovereignty makes Guam powerless to federal decisions and prevents it from engaging in foreign affairs. You see what I mean? This once again makes Guam powerless to federal decisions and prevents it from engaging in foreign affairs. Got to go independence. This implies that Guam is subject to the authority of higher or outside powers that can make decisions that are not in the best interest of the island, just like what happens to a state. We've been through this so many times in the United States, where states and the national government differ on various policy matters. And there is a clause in the Constitution that kind of speaks to this. Yeah, kind of in a roundabout, non-committal manner. This would be found at... let me see here. The clause I'm looking for is just having a little difficult rounding it up here. Well, what I'm looking for is the supremacy clause. I'll find it at the next break. I'll find it right now because we're going to take a break.
As we celebrate this holiday season, we reflect on the hardships of the past 2 years and remain grateful for the family and friends who share our journey and lighten our burdens. The team at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Portions of the program brought to you by Nissan. Choose your favorite Nissan, and there's an abundance of Nissan automobiles to choose from. Rogues, Rogue Sports, Muranos, Kicks, Sentras, Leafs, Rogues, and then start talking about the deal they want to put together for you. Enjoy 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on them. Just sign and drive away. Inventory limited, so don't wait. See Nissan Guam first. Wait, there's the fine print. I got to read the thing in fine print ease. On approved credit, 3 payments calculated, 5% APR at 60 months term, and based on the actual selling price of the vehicle only, not including down payment or any aftermarket products or accessories. See Nissan Guam for full details.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Yeah, here I am. So I found what I was looking for. Article 6, Paragraph 2 of the United States Constitution. It says, this Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. So, the separatists talk a lot about sovereignty. And if that's what you're looking for, you don't want statehood. You want independence. And that's exactly where this 20-page insert will take you if you take the time to read the whole thing. Okay, I'm going to come back to this again on Monday. We'll spend enough time to go through and analyze the important parts of it, so you'll know exactly where the separatists, that is the Commission on Separating Guam from the United States, is trying to take you. Next item on the card is the Guam government, the Government of Guam Retirement Fund versus Jerry Kitchen. And if you were to look at the Post today, you would find a nice picture of the end of the retirement fund building up in Mighty, and you will see that there is a red car that has been driven inside the building. Now, I don't know, maybe we should ban red cars from our highway. And that's why I called this the retirement fund versus Jerry Kitchen, because apparently the retirement fund has begun serving Chinese food, and that's why that red car drove through the windows at the front of the retirement fund, because he thought it was a Chinese restaurant. Now, we haven't found out all of the facts yet. We haven't found out any police officers were riding in the red car. And we don't know if there was a cover-up here. We will find out, of course, because the chief of police, Steve Ignacio, will let us know if there was a cover-up. Not only if there was a cover-up, but if there was a cover-up from the get-go. So let's watch this. Retirement Fund versus Jerry Kitchen. Any of you tailgaters out there that have occasion to go to the retirement fund for any reason, please come back and report to the Tall Tales International Radio listening audience how the Chinese food is up there at the retirement fund.
Maybe we can get Jack to drive by.
Yeah, let's let Jack be a drive-by. We don't want Jack to drive in.
Not drive through.
No, this is not a drive-through, Jack. All right. Next on the card is the zipper versus manners. And zipper is not that device that you... I heard Ray talking about this on his show the other day. Back in the day when we used to have a store called the Townhouse, which was at the intersection of Route 8 and Marine, what we called Marine Drive back in the day, it was the heart of Guam. The Townhouse intersection was the heart of Guam. And the Townhouse is probably the best department store in a really large area. It was, for where it was a pretty decent store. So that was pretty much the heart of Guam. And between the Townhouse and the post office, that's where you ran into all your friends. Yeah, I saw him down at the Townhouse the other day. Yeah. So back in the day, if a gentleman were walking around with the zipper on his fly open, his friends would say to him something like, "Hey, Jose, is the Townhouse open?" Yeah. So that's the common ordinary meaning of a zipper, right? I took a long time to tell you what a zipper was. But imagine a zipper as applied to merging traffic on the highway. And that's what we're talking about here.
How do you put a zipper on the highway, Bob?
Well, I'm going to explain this. And I've got an article here from an email service called Medium that comes up with all kinds of really interesting articles. And the title is Why the Zipper Merge Will Never Work. Yeah. And leads to dangerous road rage. It's by Carlin Bexia. And she says, I risked my life to write this article. For the past few months, I've been practicing the zipper merge or late merge. The zipper merge is when lanes are reduced. A driver merges at the ending lane reduction point, even in heavy traffic. For example, if two lanes narrow into one, you merge when your lane ends, thereby cutting a line of patiently waiting cars. Now, let's make sure everybody understands that. You're driving down the highway on a two-lane road, and you've got public works out there working on something. It's not important what they're, well, I'm assuming in a fact, not in evidence, right? You got public works out there blocking one lane of the road. I don't want to go that far, right? Saying that they're working.
It's a stretch.
Yeah. And there are signs that say 1 lane ahead, merge. Now, a lot of people, when they see that, will start waving and signaling to the people beside them and try to pull into the other lane, the lane that's going to go straight through the roadblock. Folks like me will say, I'm going to zip, and we'll drive right down to the merge point and depend on people alternating through that zip. So first the left lane, car in the left lane, then the car in the right lane, then the left, then the right, then the left, then the right. That's how a zipper works. And it works pretty well in some parts of the country. I've read that in Germany it's mandatory. They even have clever signs posted on the highway to tell you that you're supposed to zip. Okay, so that's what a zipper is. So I'm going to go back and read this again. The zipper merge is when lanes are reduced. A driver merges at the ending lane reduction point, even in heavy traffic. For example, if 2 lanes narrow into one, you merge when your lane ends, thereby cutting a line of patiently waiting cars who are saying, why in the hell does that guy think he can drive right up to the front and then pull in? I ain't going to let him in.
I was here first.
Yeah. One red-faced driver laid on his horn for at least a minute. Another shouted such profanities, I was afraid he was going to pop a blood vessel. My favorite was the driver who threw a roast beef sandwich at my car. He clearly didn't want to eat it. I get why these drivers were mad. It's one of driving's biggest conundrums. When your lane is closing, should you merge early or late? If you're trying to be a polite driver, your answer will probably be early. If you're a traffic engineer, your answer will be late. Traffic engineers found the zipper merge reduced traffic by as much as 40%. The reason is traffic flow. The zipper merge reduces differences in speed between the 2 lanes, thereby keeping both lanes moving. But just because something works in traffic simulations doesn't mean it will work in practice. Traffic experts are forgetting one fundamental component of human nature: competitiveness. Simply put, the late merge feels like line cutting to most people, and line cutting is bound to anger drivers. In one study on line cutting, researchers had actors cut people waiting in line. The people being cut only objected 54% of the time. The second time they were cut, their objection rose to a whopping 91.3%. Now, if you were in a long line of bumper-to-bumper cars and multiple people keep cutting in front of you, your anger level is going to increase with every car cutting you. Of course, they're just merging, but you might see it as cutting. We're kind of getting back to the narrative and the truth here, aren't we? But road rage is more than just getting roast beef thrown at you. Over the last 7 years, road rage has caused 218 murders, 12,610 injuries. Now, there's nothing that ties this into zipping.
The media will, though.
The media will. Do people really have to die to improve traffic congestion? Some states will answer yes. In Illinois and North Carolina, the zipper merge may soon become the law. So buckle up, drivers, and be prepared to have roast beef thrown at you. So I discovered this 6 or 7 years ago. I don't know what I was reading, but it was mentioned, and I do it because it does work better. So I have this kind of strange attitude towards being in my automobile on the highway. I'm in my automobile on the highway with the objective of trying to get somewhere, to get to a destination. I don't see my presence on the highway as an opportunity to be a virtue signaler by waving people in front of me and doing all this other stuff so that people will say, man, that guy in that white car up there, he's really a nice guy. I just don't, I'm not interested in that. If I'm in the car, I want to get from point A to point B, and I want to get there as soon as I possibly can. And the zipper really helps a lot. Now, we have a Bureau of Traffic Safety in our Department of Public Works. If anybody up there is listening, how about coming up with some signs and putting these zip signs at the beginning of all of these lane reduction of places on our highway, so that we could tamp down the road rage and get people from point A to point B faster. In a way, the zipper is kind of like roundabouts. Now, on Guam, we have one roundabout.
We can't even get that right.
Yeah, but we screwed that up royally. If you're in countries that embrace roundabouts, primarily where the Brits have been, New Zealand, Australia, certainly the British Isles, etc., it works like magic. Instead of having a four-way stop with traffic lights and all of the expense that that incurs, you have a circle with usually more than one lane, depending on how many branches off the circle there are. You get on the circle, you keep going, you probably are able to maintain your speed until you get to the road you want to turn off on, and you turn off and away you go. Nobody stops. Cars are not sitting around idling and burning gas and contributing to global warming out there, all you eco-fascists. Traffic moves faster. Statistics show that there are fewer accidents, and it costs a whole lot more. And even in a storm, when the storm knocks out the electric power, the roundabout still works. But like Jose said, we didn't get that right. We have a roundabout up at Bishop Flores Circle, and we put stop signs on the roundabout.
Oh, that is the most dangerous roundabout I've ever driven.
It is.
And I've been on some really heavy traffic roundabouts. Massachusetts has a good amount of them.
Yeah.
This one is like you have to watch the traffic.
Exactly.
Coming from that emerging inside.
Uh-huh.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's really bad. So here's my suggestion. We should take down the traffic signs on the roundabout and put up roundabout signs. And we should start an education campaign about zipping when you come to a lane reduction. And we should invent some signs that tell people, if you're coming to a lane reduction, start zipping. Another one is merging. You know, we got a couple of places where the roads are really well designed for merging, where we did get it right. So if you're coming across Airport Access Road down Magahaga Highway, when you get to the intersection with Route 8, if you want to go right, you just pull into that merge lane and away you go. You got a clear lane ahead of you all the way down to Marine Corps Drive. About one time out of 4, I get in there and the car ahead of me stops and looks and starts looking around and puts on his turn signal till he... Yeah.
No need. You know, there is one place where they did the merge wrong, and it's very dangerous the way people do it. Coming off of the overpass, going towards the National Guard Armory, where the cars merge from the overpass onto the road, where the cars are coming up the hill. There's no merge lane; it just merges right into the existing traffic. Now, there's cars behind that are a little impatient or want to go across, but the problem with that is that the car ahead of you has a blind spot and can't see you, and there's lots of potential accidents there. That's where you cannot merge ahead of somebody. Wait for the person ahead of you to merge into that lane.
And proper signage would be the answer to
There's
that.
like no sign. I think they have a yield sign.
Yeah.
But the yield doesn't make any sense whatsoever either.
Well, people interpret yield as meaning don't let the guy from the other side in ahead of you. Make sure he can't get ahead of you. Going back to the road rage thing, right? Yeah. Okay, so pet peeves about highways, and I'm going to climb on my soapbox here and say, let's make Guam a zipper zone. That and because we have an awful lot of lane reductions.
If you think about it, the considerate thing to do is to do the zipper method, because then you'll lessen the traffic and you'll feel a lot better when you get home earlier.
Absolutely. You won't spend so much time sitting out there in that long, long line that barely moves. Okay, let's take a short break, and after the break, I'm going to come back to Repeat, who wants to talk about roundabouts.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
The holidays are here, and you know what that means. Time to gather with family and friends, dress up our homes, and explore Christmas season in paradise. Why not share these moments for a chance to win $100 in cash? Log on to visitguam.com/Instagram today to participate in the Guam Visitors Bureau #Instagram photo and video contest. A winner will be chosen every week, so share your best holiday moments now and win. Brought to you by GVB, making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
Okay, so here we are. We got about 9 more minutes to start that big halftime show that we all know and love. In the meantime, I'm going to talk to a caller whose name is Say Again. No, it's not quite right. It's not Say Again, it's Repeat. Good afternoon, Repeat.
Good afternoon. Happy Friday, you guys. How are you?
Happy Friday. Bite your tongue, Pete. We hate Fridays. No tall tales on Saturday and Sunday. Yeah.
Well, you can always go back and replay it.
That's a good idea. I suspect some of our dedicated international radio listening audience members do exactly that. Go back to Facebook and YouTube and watch old episodes, looking for their favorites, right?
Yes, sir. Well, I heard you talking about the roundabouts. I have a good story about the one over at Bishop Flores. However, before that, I just wanted to mention an aside. I went to some training a couple of years ago, and there were some innovations in DWI with regard to drug driving. But just getting back to the regular plain old alcohol DWI, for every arrest that is made for DWI, there is an average of 200 to 300 DWI incidents on the road, or people driving drunk or under the influence, that doesn't get detected and doesn't end up in an arrest or a crash. So they did the statistics on that. That just shows it's really dangerous out there on Friday and Saturday nights. You got to watch out.
Absolutely.
So anyways, my story about Bishop Flores Loop, I used to take, 3-4 crash reports a week when I was stationed at Tamuning Precinct. And one lady, I gave her a ticket because she failed to yield. And so she asked, "Officer, why you ticket me?" I said, "Failure to yield." And she said, but officer, I yield and I yield, but he don't hear me because his music is loud.
Yeah, there you go. There should be a law against these really loud boom, boom, boom radios in cars, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So, anyways, it is a very dangerous loop. I can attest that, like I said, when I was down there, 3 to 4 on a good week.
Well, Jose and I think the reason is that there's no reason that you have a stop sign on a roundabout. It should be marked as a roundabout, and we should start talking to people about how you behave in a roundabout, because it's a real...
Yeah, they need to have PSAs. And also, what I live over by Potts Junction, and so I take Route 3 to go onto Route 1 every morning. And that turn from Route 3 onto Route 1 by GMC is a free right.
I mentioned that a little earlier, and people will get to that turn and stop.
Yes, it's frustrating to no end.
Yes.
So, anywho, but when you have a real big mix of drivers from all parts of the world, then you're going to end up with this kind of driving patterns here on Guam.
I think there's some sort of immigration rule that we have here that we encourage every country in the world to send their worst drivers to Guam.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's how I was
right,
recruited.
Well, you guys have a great weekend, and stay safe, and we'll see you on Monday.
Okay, repeat. Yeah, have a great week. Wow. We'll get through the weekend. I don't know about the great part, but we'll make it through somehow. Let's see. Jose Ted Pahago said roundabout was great in Fiji and New Caledonia. As he mentioned, when power is out, you don't have a cluster. Yeah, it's just one of those things that works so much better than the system we have, but will be resisted by a lot of folks. Oh, I don't like those roundabouts, you know. If I wanted to go around in circles, I'd go to the carnival right on the merry-go-round. Why can't we just have regular red and green lights there on the stop signs? Anyhow, I'm going to stick with it. I like roundabouts. I like merging traffic lanes, and I like the zipper when we come to closed lanes on the highway. Next item on the card is Pocahontas versus the Supremes. I don't know if I ever explained the term Supremes before.
That's not Diana Ross.
Well, it is.
Oh.
Yeah, because back in the 70s, when Diana Ross and the Supremes were very, very popular, the California Supreme Court was peopled by some very, very liberal justices. They were absolutely against capital punishment. No matter what, they would find some way to not impose capital punishment. The Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court at that time was known as Rose Bird. So when wags like me would talk about the California Supreme Court, we would refer to Rose Bird and the Supremes. And it worked so well because of Diana Ross and her gang. People still use the term Supremes, but they don't understand the that's really important historical background, isn't it, Jose?
Makes sense now.
Yeah, and then as it turned out, Rose Bird lost her seat on the Supremes because the folks in California wanted capital punishment. They decided they didn't want Rose Bird on the Supremes. So it's Pocahontas versus Supremes. And you know why Elizabeth Warren, the Democrat from Massachusetts, is referred to as Pocahontas, right? Yeah, you know, such a phony. For those who missed that part of the movie, Elizabeth Warren is from Oklahoma, or was born in Oklahoma, and she presented herself at Harvard University as a person of color, as a Native American. And because of that, well, I think because of that, others may take a different view. She was hired as a professor at Harvard Law School, which for the legal profession is very close to the pinnacle. It's about as high as you could get. I did mention this before, but it's worth repeating. I had a couple of implants put in my mouth here not too long ago, and the periodontist who did it told me, well, in order to do this, we have to take cadaver bone, and we have to put that in, cut your gum open, and put that inside your gums to generate new bone. The cadaver bone doesn't grow, but it provides a matrix for real bone to grow on top of it. Is that absolutely necessary? He said, we got to do the bone graft. And I said, okay, but I just wasn't thinking fast enough. Because what I should have done, I should have said, I'll go along with it, but it's got to be Native American bone. Because I would like to be a professor at Harvard Law School before I die. Just go. Yeah, and I'm sure that if I'd had any trouble at all, Elizabeth Warren would have endorsed my application. It worked for her. Well, it didn't work for her. And she denied it, and then it turned out that there was a state, I think a California state driver's license where she identified race Native American.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's not just co-opting culture.
No, that's just being very dishonest. Yeah, being a dishonest opportunist. Well, when I go through what Jonathan Turley says about her, you'll see that once an opportunist, always an opportunist. So right after the big halftime show, we're going to come back to Pocahontas versus the Supremes.
Recommendation deciding late Thursday night to advise Americans to get the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine rather than Johnson & Johnson's single shot.
That decision was made because of concerns over rare but elevated cases of blood clots in some people who received J&J shots. CDC Director Rochelle Walensky says the updated recommendation emphasizes, quote, the CDC's commitment to provide real-time scientific information to the American public. Fox News is told by a CDC official that individuals who receive the Johnson & Johnson vaccine should still receive a booster dose of any kind 2 months after their initial vaccine. In Washington, Sean Lynchell, Fox News.
The CDC decision comes as the White House makes a big push for Americans to get vaccinated.
The only real protection is to get your shots. If you get one shot, if you haven't gotten it yet, that'll help. If you're at the point where you have everything, including your booster, you're in really good shape. So move now.
President Biden sending out that message as the Justice Department asked the Supreme Court to allow the vaccine mandate to be reinstated for healthcare workers in about half the states. The FDA, meantime, permanently removing a major obstacle for women seeking abortion pills. It's eliminating the requirement they pick them up in person.
Earlier this year, the FDA dropped the in-person requirement as a pandemic precaution. Prescribing is still limited to doctors who have special certification.
Fox's Jared Halpern. Millions of American women will now be able to get a prescription in the mail after an online consultation. And on Wall Street, the Dow fell 29 points. The Nasdaq plunged 385. America's listening to Fox News.
Need to finish the job or start one the right way? Get the right stuff at East West Rental Center. You can switch to easy mode using industrial strength equipment. With years of experience helping builders, East West Rental gives you exactly what you need. Tools for landscaping, concrete, lifts, trucks, tables, tents, chairs, water blasters, excavators, forklifts, air compressors, and more. Call East West Rental Center at 646-1463 or visit them in Upper Tumont. Open Monday to Saturday from 7 to 5, Sundays 8 to 5.
Santa's coming and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 3.99% and up to $50,000. And with the new Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas Loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
Democrats say they're not giving up on passing the president's social spending plan, but it won't happen this year.
Build Back Better is all but toast for the year, but congressional Democrats don't want to say that. They think President Biden should say that. Democrats are now fighting internally. They're seething at Joe Manchin, who's negotiated with the president for weeks and is no closer to voting yes.
We have talked, we have talked, we have talked. It's time to put it on the floor and vote.
Democrats are trying to coax Manchin to support changes in the filibuster in order to approve voting rights. President Biden and Vice President Harris zoomed with Democratic senators on voting rights, but the double pressure campaign on Manchin is backfiring. It's Manchin against Senate Democrats on spending, the filibuster, even renewing the child tax credit.
Fox's Chad Pergram. The number of executions and death sentences in the U.S. drops again.
There have been 11 people put to death in state and federal prisons this year, down from 17 last year, and the fewest since 1988, according to a report from the Death Penalty Information Center. That's a nonprofit based in D.C. The report also finds the death penalty is disproportionately given to people of color, people with mental illnesses, and the poor. Virginia this year became the 23rd state to abolish capital punishment. Chris Foster, Fox News.
And the Kansas City Chiefs pad their division lead with their 7th straight win.
The Mahomes-Kelsey connection keeps the Kansas City Chiefs atop the AFC West.
Still going. Still going. Kelsey. Good night. Touchdown. Chiefs win it.
Joe Buck on Fox. Patrick Mahomes finds Travis Kelsey, who goes 34 yards for the game-winning score to open overtime as the Chiefs defeat the Los Angeles Chargers 34-28. Mahomes found his tight end for a touchdown with just over a minute left in regulation to force OT, then finding him again for the game winner. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
The holidays are here, and you know what that means. Time to gather with family and friends, dress up our homes, and explore Christmas season in paradise. Why not share these moments for a chance to win $100 in cash? Log on to visit guam.com/Instagram today to participate in the Guam Visitors Bureau #Instagram photo and video contest. A winner will be chosen every week, so share your best holiday moments now and win. Brought to you by GVB, making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck. 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
So here we are back on Tall Tales after that big halftime show that's always been such a success. It's one of the hallmarks of the Tall Tales experience, right up there with the witticism, scholarship, and self-deprecating humor of the host. Well, actually, I don't use that much self-deprecating humor.
I don't hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
I'm too proud of my humility. Yeah. Okay, I lost my Facebook here over the break. Give me a second, because there was something I wanted to pull up from Facebook. I think it was Jose Ted Pajago who asked, what's the difference between Commonwealth and independence? Is that right, Jose?
I believe that's what it was. The question was, yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, let's see, where is it here? I'm just about there, I think. Yeah, Jose Ted Pajago Jr., what's the difference between independence and Commonwealth? And the answer is all the difference in the world. However, it's not that easy to define, because the word Commonwealth is an empty vessel. It's like saying, what's the difference between a glass, a tumbler, or a bottle, and a stick? Well, the difference is the bottle depends on what you put inside the bottle. And it's the same way with Commonwealth. I think somebody on the Facebook here pointed out that Massachusetts is a Commonwealth, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
As well?
Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Commonwealth of Virginia, all Commonwealths. The Northern Marianas Islands, Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands.
Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico, in Espanol, es el Estado Libre de Puerto Rico. In English, it's the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. Then we had the British Commonwealth of Nations, which has evolved into a very loose international agreement amongst various countries, all of whom recognize the Queen of England as their sovereign.
Now, would it be better to make a distinction between incorporated versus unincorporated?
Commonwealth?
Anything.
Well, I think that those words have their greatest facility in the context of territories. So going back to Commonwealth, in 1952, the Congress attempted to create something that was very different under the American flag. They attempted to create an entity that had sovereignty, that had an agreement with the United States very similar to an international treaty. But it didn't work, because the United States said, no, that isn't what it is. We've had a couple of cases, Supreme Court cases here recently, that made that absolutely clear, that there is no inherent sovereignty in the island of Puerto Rico. In effect, Puerto Rico is no different from any of the other territories that fall within the ambit of Article 4, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution. Same thing holds true for the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas. Commonwealth, as it was explained here on Guam, really wasn't a new political status. It was an enhancement of the status that we have right now. An unincorporated territory with certain with enhanced features. For instance, I've suggested that we could improve our status, our situation as an unincorporated territory, by getting Congress to pass a law, a statute that said Guam will be treated the same as any one of the 50 states when it comes to welfare benefits. Now, the downside there is that if Congress did it, Congress could change it tomorrow. Congress is incapable of doing anything that's really very permanent by itself. The only permanence that Congress can get involved in is the amendment of the U.S. Constitution, or in a certain sense, when the Senate ratifies a treaty, that is a degree of permanence. It can't be changed by the next Congress that comes along. But as we sit here now, you hear people who want to sound intellectual say, one legislature can't bind another legislature, which is true, but one legislature can't even bind itself. And I've given that example. The example, a legislature should pass a statute that said every legislature shall begin on the 1st of December in odd number years and on no other date. And then the legislature could call itself into session on the 1st of December and pass a law that says under no circumstances shall this legislature ever be called into session on the 1st of December. And it would work. So, a statute like the one I mentioned would be a way of enhancing our particular situation. Puerto Rico has district court judges with life tenure. I would think it would be a relatively easy argument to make that Guam should have life tenure. We could go through the Commonwealth with the Northern Marianas and cherry pick some of the favorable positions out of that. There are a lot of things that we could do with our current status, except we're more content and doing nothing but bitching and complaining, especially about historical wrongs, about things that happened 100 years ago or whatever.
And going to the UN.
And going to the UN and complaining and sending Tony Babauta to give really scathing speeches to the U.S. Congress to lay the groundwork for the governor of Guam to go and meet with federal officials and ask for more of the federal COVID money. Yeah, so, it's as though we really don't want to improve our status. That they've learned helplessness is so prevalent that we don't even want to talk about improving our relationship with the United States. And with respect to the separatists, I suspect that the separatists know that they're barking at the moon, but they're going to continue to bark at the moon because their porch that they're sitting on while they're barking at the moon is paid for with taxpayer funds. So it's a really sweet deal to engage in all sorts of anti-American propaganda when you get something like paid for by the Commission on Decolonization and funded through the U.S. Department of Interior Office of Insular Affairs Technical Assistance Program. So it's a sinecure, if you know that word. It's just too good a deal to let go by, but we have to keep beating the drum. Self-determination for Chamorros, which I've explained really means an independent Guam. So the difference between Commonwealth and independence is this. So independence has a definite meaning, and I went through it at the beginning of the program. Independence contemplates a sovereign state that is independent from any other state, completely self-governing and sovereign, having the capability of entering into agreements with other states, and also, of course, being capable of being invaded by other states and losing that sovereignty. It's happened all the time through world history. Okay, I see some smoke signals here. Looking out the window, I see some smoke signals. I think it's time to go to Pocahontas versus the Supremes. And this is by one of my favorite columnists, Jonathan Turley, Destroying the Court to Save It. Warren calls for packing the Supreme Court with a liberal majority. This week, Senator Elizabeth Warren finally buried her former persona as a law professor. In a transition that began in 2011, Warren has struggled with the demands of politics that often pit her against core legal principles. Warren's final measure of devotion to politics came in the Boston Globe op-ed, where she called for the Supreme Court to be packed with a liberal majority. She justified her call by denouncing the court for voting wrongly on decisions and, perish the thought, against widely held public opinion. So if the court makes a ruling that's against widely held public opinion, that's really wrong, according to Pocahontas. Our framers designed the courts to be able to resist widely held public opinion, and yes, even the Congress. That's what we mean by an independent judiciary. Warren's solution is to change the court to make it more amenable to the demands of the public and to the opinion of Elizabeth Warren. Some of us have been discussing the expansion of the court for decades. However, there's a difference between court reform and court packing. What Democrat members are demanding now is raw court packing to add 4 members to the court to give liberals an instant majority, a movement denounced by figures like the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the incredible RBG, the face of the progressive movement. Yeah, the princess of abortion. Everything that every progressive wanted their daughter to grow up to be like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, or maybe Stephen Breyer, depends. Depends on
their daughters.
Yeah, their daughters. Depends on how deeply you are into the tranny movement, right? Last year, the House Judiciary Committee Chair, Jerry Nadler, a Democrat from New York, known on this show as Nads.
You don't got any.
If you remember what the word Nads used to mean, yeah, this is Senator Nads from New York. And Ed Markey, of Democrat from Massachusetts, and others stood in front of the Supreme Court to announce a court-packing bill to give liberals a one-justice majority. This follows threats from various Democrat members that conservative justice had better vote with liberal colleagues or else. Senator Jean Shaheen, a Democrat from New Hampshire, recently issued a warning to the Supreme Court. Reaffirm Roe versus Wade or face a revolution. Senator Richard Blumenthal,
war hero
Richard Blumenthal, previously warned the Supreme Court that if it continued to issue conservative rulings or chip away at Roe versus Wade, it would trigger a seismic movement to reform the court. It may not be expanding the Supreme Court. It may be making changes to its jurisdiction or requiring certain numbers of votes to strike down certain past precedents. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, also known as Chucky, who also declared in front of the Supreme Court, and this is unbelievable for a senator to say this, I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price.
Can you imagine if anybody else said something like that in front of the courthouse?
Yeah.
They would say, "Oh, that's a threat."
Yeah, and you know we're not supposed to be threatening the Supreme Court, independent judiciary, and all that.
Oh, there's another branch is threatening a different branch with sanctions.
Yeah. For her part, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, also known as AOC, questioned the whole institution's value. If it's not going to vote consistently with her views in the Democrat Party, quote, how much does the current structure benefit us? And I don't think it does. So let's do away with it. Warren seems to be channeling more AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, than FDR. Roosevelt at least tried to hide his reckless desire to pack the court by pushing an age-based rule. It was uniquely stupid. The bill would have allowed Roosevelt to pick up to 6 justices for every member who is over 70 years old. Yeah. And you know, Roosevelt's famous New Deal initiative, after he tried this, he couldn't get anything through Congress. Nobody liked it. And, you know, the old Santana saying, those who don't understand the lessons of history are doomed to repeat it. Warren, like AOC, wants the Democrat base to know that she's pushing a pure, outcome-changing court-packing scheme without even the pretense of a neutral rule. Despite the fact that the court has more often voted on non-ideological lines and regularly issued unanimous decisions, Warren denounced the court as an extremist body that has threatened or outright dismantled fundamental rights in this country. Now, of course, you know what Warren means when she says a fundamental right, right? Fundamental rights of women to kill the babies, you know, the preborn babies living within their bodies. Those fundamental values do not apparently include judicial independence. What is more striking is Warren's use of a clearly false premise that the Republicans packed the court first. Quote, this Republican court packing has undermined legitimacy of every action the current court takes. She's referring to the Republicans refusing to vote on the nomination of Merrick Garland during the Obama administration. Now I got to stop here and insert my own comment. You know, when Obama nominated Merrick Garland, my thought was, he doesn't look like he's so bad. A little bit on the liberal side, but he might be okay, you know. Politically, maybe it would be better for the Senate to go ahead and confirm him. We could get somebody a whole lot worse than that. Turn on your recorders. You're going to want to save this for posterity. Boy, was I wrong. You see what happened to Merrick Garland as soon as he had a little power. Wow. What a guy. He's the Attorney General of the United States. You know, he may very well be the worst Attorney General we've ever had.
He goes after parents.
Yeah. Many of us criticized the lack of a Senate vote at that time, and I was one of them. However, that is not court packing. It did not add seats to the court. The Senate has the constitutional authority to vote or not to vote on a nominee. It was perfectly constitutional. What Warren is advocating is the addition of seats to the court, which Congress can do, but most voters oppose as unprincipled and dangerous. Let's see, unprincipled and dangerous. Warren wants to. Yeah, okay, it fits.
It's consistent.
Yeah, it fits. You can't fault her for lack of consistency, right? Yeah, somebody said, Elizabeth, do you want to change the Supreme Court? She said, how? Yeah. For Warren to call the Garland controversy court packing is all that you have to know about her column. She knows that it was not court packing, just as she knows that the court packing is fundamentally wrong. However, the Warren op-ed was her Rubicon, where she crossed over from being a law professor to being a politician. That transition has not been an easy one for Warren. As an academic, Warren was described as a die-hard conservative who was a leading advocate for corporations. All of that had to go when she decided to seek the Democrat nomination for the Senate. Even more has to go if you seek the Democrat nomination for president. An even greater priority now as Democrats and media figures seek alternatives to President Biden. I don't think Warren's old enough. She's not in her late 70s. How the hell does she think she can be president? She's too young. Yeah. Academics often evolve in their views of constitutional or statutory issues. However, Warren never made the transition from a corporate defender to an anti-corporate activist in her academic writings. It came largely after her entry into politics without an explanation of the reason for adopting the new positions. The fact is that Warren had some interesting scholarship in the business law area, and it would be equally interesting to understand why she has moved away from those positions. That, however, was not enough. In the age of rage, one has to show that you are willing to do what others are not willing to do, like tear down the leading judicial institution in our constitutional system. If you're going to run in the Democrat Party, you need to be a, quote, made politician, kind of like a made man in the mafia. A made politician who has demonstrated that you can dispense with the niceties of the Constitution and do what makes others cringe. After all, how does the court, quote, benefit us? AOC asked. Those other candidates want to support higher taxations or spending bills, but they're weaklings if they balk at packing the Supreme Court. There's an element of release to crossing that Rubicon. You are no longer burdened by the need to justify one's actions in light of constitutional history or values. For example, during the confirmation hearing for Justice Kavanaugh, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse demanded that Kavanaugh promise to respect stare decisis on cases like Roe, but then called for overturning cases like Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission. So principle has nothing to do with it. It's all pragmatic politics. I don't care about how we get there. I'm only results oriented. The Warren column is perfectly Orwellian in declaring that the Supreme Court now threatens the foundations of our nation while using that claim to destroy our highest court. It's the judicial version of the explanation in the Vietnam War that it became necessary to destroy the town to save it. Warren would open up the court to continual manipulation by shifting majorities in Congress, recreating the court in the image of our dysfunctional Congress. So on December 15, 2021, Elizabeth Warren finally transitioned to being a pure politician, unburdened and unrestrained. From tax the rich to pack the court, Warren is now soundbite ready and principle resistant for 2024. All right, let's go to Chicago for the seventh inning stretch.
Subway's Eat Fresh Refresh has done it again, serving up yet another new and improved sub, the Cali Fresh Steak, loaded with tender, flavorful marinated steak on top of thick-cut hickory smoked bacon, smashed avocado, and fresh mozzarella. The Cali Fresh Steak is protein-packed to leave you feeling full and satisfied. Cali Fresh Steak is made on our freshly baked hearty multigrain bread layered with fresh veggies of your choice. Subway, eat fresh.
As we celebrate this holiday season, we reflect on the hardships of the past 2 years and remain grateful for the family and friends who share our journey and lighten our burdens. The team at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
Portions of the program brought to you by Nissan. Choose your favorite Nissan, and there's an abundance of Nissan automobiles to choose from. Rogues, Rogue Sports, Muranos, Kicks, Sentras, Leafs, Rogues, and then start talking about the deal they want to put together for you. Enjoy 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on them. Just sign and drive away. Inventory limited, so don't wait. See Nissan Guam first. Wait, there's the fine print. I got to read the thing in fine print ease. On approved credit, 3 payments calculated, 5% APR, 60 months term, and based on the actual selling price of the vehicle only, not including down payment or any aftermarket products or accessories. See Nissan Guam for full details.
Okay, here we are at Wrigley Field in Chicago, the world's most beautiful ballpark. I suppose since I've been talking about Pocahontas, we should do the 7th inning stretch in Cleveland. Why would that be, Jose?
The Indians.
Because Pocahontas would feel much more at home with the Cleveland Indians, right? Yeah. Or maybe even Atlanta with the Braves. Well, I don't know. Then we get into this whole, can you be a woman and be a member of the Atlanta Braves? If you really want to be, I think you can.
She's old school and went to Milwaukee.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the story about Elizabeth Warren. And this sounds a little strange, but as I watched Elizabeth Warren come forward, I was sad, because here's a woman that has a well-functioning brain housing group. She's extremely intelligent. She has a lot of good experience. She's a lawyer. Her specialty, or legal specialty, is bankruptcy. Very complicated area of the law. And, if you're looking for a female to be president, and I were going to make a list, there would have been a time when I'd have put her name on that list for the reasons that I just mentioned. But it's as though, and Turley lays it out so clearly, it's as though this woman with a lot of talent and a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge contracted this horrible disease. It's like a science fiction movie, like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or
totally disfigured her.
Yeah, her physical appearance stayed the same. I don't remember the name of the movie, but these folks from some other planet came in and implanted something in the back of the neck.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers?
Well, close. They implanted something in the back of people's necks, and they could control. And that's like what happened to Elizabeth Warren. So this incisive, analytical, intelligent person turned into something, as Turley described. I wouldn't elect her to be the assistant dog catcher in Malolo. Just completely, a complete denigration of herself, because she got mixed up in Democrat politics, and she is an opportunist. We know that about her. Pocahontas, she wanted to be a Native American to get ahead.
Yeah, and I thought it was an interesting point. He said there's no transition in any of her writings or anything like that. It went from one to another just right overnight.
Yeah. So, it'd be a little different if she had some sort of an epiphany. And one of the things that, if you want to be a successful law professor, you got to publish law review articles. And that's a perfect opportunity to get into these kinds of things. But she didn't do that. She ran for Congress for the Senate as a Democrat. She ran for president as a Democrat, and she's been going hard left ever since. And now, according to Turley, she's there. When a lawyer, a law professor, someone who ought to know better says we've got to change the Supreme Court, we've got to add justices to it, not for reasons like because the court would function better, because it would handle its workload better, because of this or that, because I don't like the results. And in order to get the results that I like, we've got to put 4 more people on the court. You know, that's just like when you're playing pinball, you know, and you want to pick the machine up a little bit to make the ball roll right. And I'm not cheating. I was just kind of seeing how heavy the machine was, right?
Well, Turley's article is the tilt.
Yeah, it was, for sure. Okay, so much for Pocahontas. Next item on the card is zombie Marxism. Marxism versus America. And this is an article that appeared in Law and Liberty, another one of the conservative email services that I get. And it talks about things that I've been talking about since there's been a Tall Tales, the Frankfurt School, Antonio Gramsci, neo-Marxism, cultural Marxism, etc. And it ties it into everything that's going on today. Black Lives Matter, some of the Democrat initiatives, etc. So here it goes. This December, we celebrate the dissolution of the Soviet Union. The communist superpower Ronald Reagan rightly named the evil empire. Yet everywhere today, Marxism still stalks humanity. Indeed, today we can paraphrase Karl Marx and write that its specter haunts not just Europe, but the entire world, including the United States, for sure. We must understand this as a global threat. Since its birth in 1848 Communist Manifesto by Marx and Frederick Engels, communism has been a call to arms that knows no borders, especially for Leon Trotsky. But we must also understand, as the Kremlin in its time certainly did, that the big fight is over the United States. Once Marxists seize that most elusive jewel in the crown, they have the world. That's why this essay will focus mostly on the U.S. Before we catalog the dangerous state of play with communism, we should remember the good news. Marxism may be resurgent, but it is being vigorously confronted by the same force that defeated the Soviet Union, the American people. Man, I hope so, but I really wonder. I really do. When we saw the likes of Tom Shea, Dr. Tom Shea, down on Skinner Plaza with a bunch of doctors all dressed in white, demonstrating in favor of Black Lives Matter, calling it white coats for Black Lives Matter. I'm not so sure the American people, well, I shouldn't say, I know that some of the American people haven't caught on yet. And then others have and are embracing it. The American people, they've joined what some may dismiss as culture wars, but it's really a consequential battle of ideas. Surveys show Americans writ large reject these ideas and are starting to discern the stakes. We need discernment because Marxism's breakthroughs today are the result of different strategies and tactics. Gone are frontal military threats, such as along the Fulda Gap in Germany, or in actual wars in the fields of Central America in the 1980s. Just as we face constant mutations of the coronavirus, today we face a different mutant form of Marxism. I want to repeat that. We face a different mutant form of Marxism. It's not your father's Marxism. It's not workers of the world unite. You have nothing to lose but your change. Violent overthrow of the capitalist class. So going on, yes, today's ascendant American Marxists have their supporters in the halls of power in Beijing and Caracas. But it would be a mistake to see them as Chinese or Venezuelan agents, as some of their predecessors were Soviet stooges in the 20th century. The leaders of Black Lives Matter groups, the creators of the 1619 Project, and the architects of critical race theory may be internationalists who believe in the manifesto's call for world revolution, but they are a very American phenomenon. We must understand and confront them in those terms. Much is different today from the last time America faced a concerted communist threat. Communists now realize that domestic revolutions to overthrow the bourgeoisie are not viable in every place, if they are possible in any place. Today, revolution comes at the end, not at the beginning. It must be preceded or replaced by the arduous work of 1, organizing people, 2, indoctrinating them, 3, convincing them to become domestic agents of cultural replacement. That's the mutation we confront. The current efforts to besmirch the American story, indeed to change the original story itself, as we see with the New York Times 1619 Project. The New York Times, all the news that's fit to print, the record of America. At one time, going back, New York Times versus Sullivan, the Pentagon Papers, one of the most respected institutions in the United States was the New York Times. Getting out there, catching the bad guys, exposing what needed to be. And now, the 1619 Project. Let's see. As we see with the New York Times 1619 Project, amount to a campaign to transform America's societal structure that has been underway for at least 3 decades. They've been at it for 30 years. It rapidly accelerated after BLM, Black Lives Matter, was founded in 2013, and then it exploded into society after the George Floyd riots of 2020. The result? The critical race theory indoctrination that has so angered parents. So I got to go back to George Floyd one more time. This is what happened as far as I'm concerned. George Floyd pulled up to a convenience store in Minneapolis with his drug dealer. And the drug dealer wanted to break a 20. But he didn't want to go into the convenience store because he tried before and they chased him out. So he gave the $20 to George Floyd, $20 bill to George Floyd. It was counterfeit. George Floyd knew it was counterfeit. He goes in and tries to pass the counterfeit bill. The store clerk calls the cops on him. That's what you do when you find someone passing counterfeit money. The cops come along. They attempt to take George Floyd into custody. He resists. Something that is easily called resisting arrest. A guy named Chauvin follows Minneapolis police procedure because George Floyd is suffering from something called excited delusion. That's part of Minneapolis training. I'm sorry, excited, not delusion, excited, delirium, maybe? Something like that. It's in the Minneapolis training.
I think it's delirium.
Yeah. And the Minneapolis training guidance says when you have someone like that, you immobilize him by placing him on the ground and putting your knee on his neck so he can't move, and call the medics, which is exactly what Chauvin did. Now, 20 years ago, this wouldn't have made any difference, but nowadays everybody has a camera in his pocket. And somebody ran some video of that, and the video went viral, as they say, and the public was confronted with this poor, innocent black man being, in effect, choked to death by a white man who is a cop, and it got out of control. Now, George Floyd was a career criminal. He'd spent 4 years in prison, etc. Not an admirable character at all. He wasn't doing something. He was breaking the law at the time all this happened. And if you look at it from anything other than a racist dimension, you find that Chauvin was doing what he was supposed to do. But George Floyd is now right up there. I'm surprised that the GoFundMe account hasn't arisen to put George Floyd's face on Mount Rushmore, because he is now recognized as a hero. He had a funeral that would rival any state funeral, and has kicked off this massive set of riots that plagued the whole country last summer. Got all the way even to Wisconsin, to Kenosha, for crying out loud. So, George Floyd riots of 2020. The result? The critical race theory indoctrination has so angered parents. The architects of the 1619 Project and the academics who created CRT are equally part of the effort to replace America's narrative. The term white supremacy, which is meant to replace such ideas as land of the free, appears no fewer than 38 times in the foundational text of CRT, critical race theory. It was BLM, however, that created the propitious environment to replace America's narrative, and it is on these organizations that we must focus. Once we do, we discovered that the founders of Black Lives Matter organizations are at the center of the destructive unrest that led to the hacking of our cultural software. They are not just trained Marxists, as BLM co-founder Patrice Cullors labeled herself, and another co-founder, Alicia Garcia, as you were Alicia Garza, from public view, but they were recruited and trained by Marxists steeped in this new view of how to build the revolutionary consciousness through recruitment, organizing, and indoctrination. So let's head for Churchill Downs and see if we can find Antonio Gramsci there.
Howdy, Chili's is serving y'all some Texas-sized family meal, because everything's bigger in Texas. Enjoy full racks of Chili's world-famous baby back ribs, margarita chicken, savory shrimp, beef fajita, smoked jalapeno sausages, mashed potatoes, and corn on the cob. Man, this meal's bigger than Dale's, but it ain't breaking the bank. Chili's has Texas-sized family meals for just $45 to feed your crew of 3 to 6 folks. For your youngins, just add $5 for a kid's meal. Chili's, more life and bigger meals happen here.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky. Tall Tales, home stretch. I got just about three furlongs left till I get to the finish line. And Johnny Utah chimes in and said the words I was looking for was delirium. Yeah. So excited delirium. And this all came out in Chauvin's trial, that the Minneapolis police training manual said this is how you deal with excited delirium. So, the fact that Chauvin followed the training guidance, etc., doesn't excuse the fact that he didn't use good judgment and he didn't let Floyd up at the time, you know, when he needed to get up and breathe a little bit. Oh, yeah, and another thing about Floyd, he was under the influence of methamphetamine and a couple of other drugs. So this guy was far from a model citizen. Now, that doesn't mean that he should suffer capital punishment by a police officer. But if you look at all of these so-called police brutality cases, they all have this similarity. The people involved were not good citizens, and they were engaged in illegal activity when they fell afoul of the law. So that was the beginning of, not the beginning of Black Lives Matter, but all of these things were in place, and the George Floyd matter was the rallying point that they needed to start setting the cities on fire and really taking the Black Lives Matter thing forward. Now, the next item here is a gentleman named Antonio Gramsci, who is extremely big in cultural Marxism, neo-Marxism. And this is the scoop on him. Today's Marxism can be tailor-made to each circumstance. The adaptability has replaced the rigid ideas expressed in the Communist Manifesto. Today's successful Marxists understand that no, the economy does not determine all of man's actions, as Marx once wrote. And no, the internal contradictions of capitalism will not constantly produce revolutions. There are Marxists who have boned up on the lessons of the 1920s Italian communist leader Antonio Gramsci, who I think had some influence on Michael Bavacqua. I'm not saying that Michael Bavacqua is a Marxist, but I will say that I think he's been influenced by Antonio Gramsci. These are Marxists who have been honed up on the lessons of 1920s Italian communist leader Antonio Gramsci, or the theoretical works of his German contemporaries at the so-called Frankfurt School. Now, you've heard me mention the Frankfurt School before, which produced critical theory, of which critical race theory is an American offshoot. It was these Europeans who incubated the mutant strains. Gramsci's basic theory was simple, even if the ramifications were complex. Writing in the 20s and 30s after the failure by Italy's workers to set up a communist state in 1918, Gramsci said the proletarian was consenting to its own enslavement. How so? It buys into the cultural trappings of the bourgeois oppressor, the church, the family, the nation state. These are the cultural trappings of the bourgeois oppressor, the church, the family, the nation state. As a result, in countries with rich civil societies, such as those in Western Europe and the United States, communists needed to undertake a war of position. This involved a long-term effort to organize the masses and indoctrinate them into Marxist ideas. The German critical theorists, that is the Frankfurt School, for similar reasons came up with a similar explanation. The worker bought into consumerist conceptual superstructure and was unaware of his own crushing oppression. Both concluded that intellectuals had to give the workers revolutionary consciousness. Intellectuals. And we see them all the time, don't we? Gramsci,
rabble-rousers.
Yeah, Gramsci and the critical theorists did not repudiate Marx and Lenin so much as expanded on their beliefs. Marx may have written that revolutions would inevitably come when the material forces of production in society come into conflict with the existing relations of production. But to Gramsci, popular beliefs and similar ideas are themselves material forces. Now, this is long and it's a little heavy and a little thick, but I think it's something that we have to understand because it's going on all around us. And I would say that the separatist movement uses these CRT, critical race theory, like tactics. And you'll see that as I get farther into this article here, that you have to infiltrate the institutions of the society and let people know how badly they're being crushed. Because they wouldn't realize it unless the intellectuals come along and point it out to them. The intellectuals, Hope Cristobal, Michael Bavacqua, Robert Underwood, and the other separatists that have become so familiar to us. So that winds up another week here on Tall Tales. Jose and I have to go into hibernation again because there's no Tall Tales tomorrow or Saturday.
And this is the last Friday of 2021 for Tall Tales.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there will be no Tall Tales next Friday, nor the Friday after that. So I don't know if we should feel good about that or bad, Jose.
It's just another fact that is there and it's going to go away.
All right, so
we'll be back on Monday.
We'll see you back. We'll see you all on Monday, and I got to wind up the show with "Let's Go, Brandon."
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
An unusual move by the CDC. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. The CDC changes its vaccine recommendation, deciding late Thursday night to advise Americans to get the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine rather than Johnson & Johnson's single shot.
That decision was made because of concerns over rare but elevated cases of blood clots in some people who receive J&J shots. CDC Director Rochelle Walensky says the updated recommendation emphasizes, quote, the CDC's commitment to provide real-time scientific information to the American public. Fox News is told by a CDC official that individuals who receive the Johnson & Johnson vaccine should still receive a booster dose of any kind 2 months after their initial vaccine. In Washington, Sean Langell, Fox News.
The CDC decision comes as the White House makes a big push for Americans to get vaccinated.
The only real protection is to get your shots. If you get one shot, if you haven't gotten it yet, that'll help. If you're at the point where you have everything, including your booster, you're in really good shape. So move now.
President Biden sending out that message as the Justice Department asked the Supreme Court to allow the vaccine mandate to be reinstated for healthcare workers in about half the states. The FDA, meantime, permanently removing a major obstacle for women seeking abortion pills. It's eliminating the requirement they pick them up in person.
Earlier this year, the FDA dropped the in-person requirement as a pandemic precaution. Prescribing is still limited to doctors who have special certification.
Fox's Jared Halpern. Millions of American women will now be able to get a prescription in the mail after an online consultation. And on Wall Street, the Dow fell 29 points. The Nasdaq plunged 385. America's listening to Fox News.
from the Fox News Podcasts Network. Stay on top of the latest news and information from Fox News. Listen and download the Fox News Hourly Update on your time. The trending stories you need anytime you want it. Listen and download now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com. From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
What are the most important issues facing Americans today? Every Monday, join me, Brett Baer, Chief Political Anchor and Executive Editor of Special Report, and my rotating all-star panel of experts as we discuss the policies, practices, and solutions to the biggest and most important issues of the day. You can hear new episodes every Monday. Subscribe now at foxnewspodcast.com or wherever you download podcasts.
The Fox News Rundown is a weekday morning podcast that dives deep into the major and controversial stories of the day. Hosted by the anchors of Fox News Radio. Subscribe now to hear a perspective of news you won't find anywhere else. Listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com.
Democrats say they're not giving up on passing the president's social spending plan.